You've heard of Colorado, mountains, snow, adventure. Yet the real story lies beneath the postcard image. This land was forged in fire and shaped by forces older than civilization itself. Long before borders or towns, people carved homes into red cliffs that still stand against time. Rivers continue to cut through rock older than the mountains. And high in the valleys, abandoned towns remain exactly as they were left more than a century ago. In Manitou, sandstone dwellings still bear the marks of hands that shaped them. At North Clear Creek Falls, water cuts through volcanic layers formed before the Rockies rose. And in St. Elmo, time stopped with the last train, its homes and streets still waiting, unchanged since the rails fell silent in 1938. Stay with me as we uncover Colorado's most extraordinary wonders, where rare discoveries and forgotten mysteries might change the way you see this state forever. The Manitou cliff dwellings were taken apart stone by stone from their first canyon and later rebuilt in the Rocky Mountains. Moving them took years as workers hauled each piece by oxen and wagon, like a massive puzzle, delivered one rock at a time. Inside, the rooms were built shorter than a normal doorway, trapping warmth the way a thermos keeps coffee hot for hours. Ladders once led to the upper floors, and during attacks people pulled them up to stop anyone from climbing and getting in. The narrow passages force visitors to turn sideways, squeeze through gaps just wider than their shoulders, and duck under low ceilings. They also climb the adobe steps and use aged handholds carved into the cliffs to reach the dwellings. Farther up in these mountains lies the ghost town of St. Elmo, where old abandoned buildings still remain. The town started as a small mining camp and quickly turned into a busy place where people searched for gold and silver in the mountains. It pulled out $60 million worth of gold before shutting down, more money than most states made back then. However, when the mines ran out, everyone packed up and took the last train out, abandoning the town. Additionally, locals say one woman was left behind, and her ghost still roams the empty streets, locking doors, peeking through windows, and guarding the town as if waiting for her neighbours to return. The railroad from St. Elmo eventually carried tourists farther west to Glenwood Canyon. Here, 1,000 workers known as the Dynamite Boys drilled holes by hand and packed them with black powder until the mountain walls broke open. Above the river, cliffs stood taller than city buildings, formed by the water that kept cutting through the rock layers. Building a highway here was difficult. Engineers had to hang machines from cables over the cliffs, which made it one of the most expensive roads ever built. At first, the road's sharp turns caused many accidents, but it was later rebuilt to curve more safely along the canyon walls. Moreover, waterfalls from melting snow spill from cracks in the rocks, then vanish underground before bursting out again higher up the cliffs. And if you follow its trails, you'll see a small lake, resting on a cliff shelf, like a floating pool. Hanging Lake was formed when a huge rock slide blocked a ledge in the canyon, trapping water and creating a clear turquoise pool that appears to hang above the cliffs like a balcony. One of its waterfalls shoots from a hole in the cliff, hitting the rocks with such force that it carved a cave behind it that people can walk through, as if it's a curtain. Furthermore, the lake is one of only 2 hanging lakes in the entire world, rarer than finding a 4-leaf clover. And below it, animals like beavers cut down trees and stack them to build dams, creating ponds that further change the canyon's water movement. Beavers are the only creatures besides people that purposely renovate the places they live on. These smart animals build dams that turn small streams into wide ponds. Because their teeth never stop growing, they have to keep chewing wood so they don't get too long. Underwater they can see clearly thanks to see-through eyelids that work like goggles and protect their eyes. In shallow waters, they drag heavy logs by biting one end and pushing with their strong back feet. On land, their flat tails help them stay balanced while they sit upright and chew through thick trunks. Lowry, Pueblo was a regional meeting place where about 100 people gathered inside a big kiva. It was built on top of older pit houses from another group, like putting a new house over old ones without clearing them first. More than 40,000 stones were stacked without any cement, fitted so neatly that the walls are still standing today. One sealed room had colourful murals that started crumbling the second it was reopened after centuries underground. Everyone living there vanished by the year 1300, leaving full houses and belongings as if they planned to return the next day. They actually returned and left the Pueblo several more times for unknown reasons until it was finally abandoned, leaving a pattern that archaeologists still cannot explain today. Unlike the Pueblos, Red Rocks Park remains solid, with stone formations over 300 million years old. The giant sandstone slabs tilted when tectonic plates collided, pushing the flat ocean floor into walls taller than apartment buildings. Additionally, the stones turned red because the iron in the rock rusts, similar to a car left in the rain for years. These rocks also absorb sound instead of reflecting it, creating acoustics so precise that opera singers called it better than any concert hall. Ironically, an amphitheatre is located close by, probably annoyed at the rocks for stealing the spotlight. This open-air amphitheatre, carved between the red stone walls, has hosted everyone from the Beatles to modern bands. However, it became famous not for music, but for a UFO sighting. Staff saw a disc-shaped craft the size of a 3-story building hover silently above the venue, then tilt and vanish when they all stopped to watch. After the incident, the amphitheatre still hosts over 4 million visitors each year, many glancing at the sky between songs, hoping to spot what the workers saw. While people argue about what appeared that night, the eastern fence lizards scurry across the same red rocks, hunting insects in their cracks. These odd lizards do push-ups on rocks to show dominance, flexing like tiny bodybuilders and challenging rivals over the best sunbathing spots. Their scales have tiny points that make them rough to touch, giving them the nickname pine lizards, as they feel like tree bark. Perched on logs, they stay completely still until an insect comes close, then dart forward so fast the prey can't see it coming. When threatened, they run in zigzags so fast they blur, and sometimes flipping over, but still keep running. Animus Forks is a ghost town at an altitude so brutal that winters trapped residents for months. One blizzard dumped 25 feet of snow, forcing people to dig tunnels between buildings just to visit neighbours. The town started with miners living in log cabins, but over time it grew fancier. One wealthy owner even built a 2-story house with a bay window, which looked ridiculous surrounded by the rough shacks. Even the jail was built differently, with boards stacked flat instead of upright, making walls as thick as concrete, because prisoners kept breaking out of normal construction. Disaster struck when a hotel kitchen fire spread to 14 other buildings, destroying half the town in a single night, burning too fast for anyone to stop it. Eventually, everyone abandoned the town so suddenly that newspapers from 1907 were left stuck to walls and shelves exactly where they had been placed decades before. While miners in Animus Forks used steam-powered crushers, a nearby mill ran only on water to generate electricity for silver refineries. The crystal mill was built on wooden stilts over a waterfall, using the drop-to-spin turbines, basically creating a powerhouse balanced on sticks above rushing water. Workers had to cross a narrow plank bridge to reach it every day, a dangerous task that one man even fell and passed away when the ice made the boards slick. Legend says a worker's ghost still walks the planks on foggy mornings, trying to cross the bridge he slipped from decades ago. Moreover, the wooden dwellings around the site lean at an angle that looks like they could fall, held together by wooden pegs and joints instead of nails. The mill remains abandoned today, the waterfall slowly rotting the beams that once assisted turbines and workers. The Cliff Palace of Mesa Verde National Park is the largest cliff dwelling in North America, constructed by the ancestral Puebloans between 1190 and 1260 CE. Built into a natural alcove in the Sandstone cliffs, it was home to around 100 to 120 people, making it a central hub for the surrounding community. The dwellings were built using sandstone, wooden beams and mortars made from soil, water and ash. The circular rooms called kivas are thought to have played a vital role in ceremonies and cultural traditions. Beneath those ceremonial kivas, pocket gophers dig tunnels over 200 feet long, with separate rooms for sleeping, food storage, and waste. They dig using their front teeth instead of claws, teeth that grow 14 inches per year to prevent drilling through their own skull. Gophers keep their lips closed behind their teeth while digging, chewing through dirt without swallowing any. When they emerge to grab plants, they pull entire stems down into their tunnels by the roots, staying hidden from hawks. These underground builders thrive on hillsides where humans also once lived below ground to survive harsh winters in abandoned towns like Ashcroft. This mining site grew from nothing to 20 saloons in just 3 years, with residents dodging construction lumber on streets that barely had time to dry before new buildings went up. For a short time, the town outgrew Aspen, hosting over 2,000 people who believed they had struck it rich on silver deposits barely deeper than a swimming pool. When residents left, they dragged entire cabins to Aspen, leaving empty foundations scattered across the hillside like missing teeth. The last resident stayed alone for decades, drinking and reading until his passing in 1939, officially turning Ashcroft into a ghost town. One hotel remains as the only 2-story building, its empty windows staring over a valley where winter snow can bury the entire town. The San Juan Mountains contain 14 peaks, over 14,000 feet, making them one of the highest and most dangerous ranges on the continent. Volcanic activity formed these peaks, leaving rocks rich in silver and gold, so abundant that miners called it the richest mineral belt on Earth. snow covers the highest peaks year-round, with avalanches frequently ripping down slopes, sometimes eliminating entire mining crews and burying towns in seconds. Located between these slopes are alpine lakes so blue they look unreal, including Columbine Lake, where wildflowers bloom in colours identical to the water. The blue comes from glacial flour, rock ground so fine by moving ice that it stays suspended in the water like powder in milk. It stays cold enough that ice floats on the surface even in summer, and fish grow only half the size of their lowland relatives. Purple columbines bloom along the shore in late summer, surviving freezing nights that would harm typical garden plants. The only road to the lake climbs through Owl Creek Pass, a summit so narrow that two cars barely squeeze past each other on switchbacks built over cliffs. Aspen trees line the slopes of this creek pass, turning entire mountainsides gold in the fall when the leaves change all at once. From the ridgeline, rock spires called Chimney Peak rise over 11,000 feet into the sky. These towers form from volcanic rock that hardened after eruptions and were slowly carved by wind and ice. In the pockets of soil between the rocks, wildflowers take root and bloom, adding colour to the terrain. Nearby Silverjack Mountain can be seen, named after a miner who supposedly buried treasure on its slopes. This mountain is named after a miner who discovered a silver vein on the site, then vanished, sparking rumours that he hid silver bars somewhere in the rocks. Hoodoos rise from the summit like stone fingers, some tall enough to cast shadows across the entire valley. Streams from the mountain flow down to the Yankee Girl Mine, one of the most profitable silver operations in the range. The Yankee Girl Mine extracted millions worth of silver from tunnels over a mile into the mountain, producing ore pure enough to go straight to the smelter. Miners worked by candlelight in shafts so narrow they had to crawl, struggling to breathe the thin, high-altitude air. Ore chutes, made from hand-cut timbers joined without nails, carried rock down to the mills below. Rusted equipment and collapsed tunnels show where workers were trapped in cave-ins, gas explosions, and falls. Streams from the mine turned orange from metal contamination, a nasty colour compared to the blue lake's clear turquoise water. The blue lakes in the Mount Sneffels wilderness form 3 pools stacked like steps. Their bright colour comes from glacial flour, rock ground so fine by glaciers it stays suspended in the water, reflecting only blue light. minerals further filter other wavelengths, making the lakes appear like pure blue mirrors. Despite the cold and thin air, rare birds such as three-toed woodpeckers still hunt insects in the trees along the shores. These woodpeckers drill on trees left bare by mining and forest fires, searching for beetles that hide in the wood other birds overlook. With one fewer toe than most birds, they can strike faster, swinging their heads up to 20 times per second without injury. These birds once had competitors for the mountain's loudest resident, miners, whose drillings and hammerings filled a camp called Independence. Gold was discovered in this site on the 4th of July, so they named it after the holiday. After the discovery, more people moved in, and within 3 years it grew to about 1,500 residents before the gold ran out. When a harsh blizzard hit, everyone became trapped. With no way to travel through the snow, the townspeople tore apart their own houses to build 75 pairs of skis and escape together down the mountain. Mining companies that built Independence also placed a powerhouse on top of Bridal Veil Falls, providing electricity to mines 2,000 feet below in Telluride. The water plunges around 300 feet down, enough space to stack the Statue of Liberty underneath and still leave room above her torch. It is one of the oldest working AC power plants in the world, with the generators still running on the original Westinghouse equipment. One family lived inside it for over 20 years, raising 3 children in a house hanging above a 400-foot drop, where one wrong step could be fatal. In winter, professional climbers scaled the frozen waterfall, and after one televised attempt, it became the continent's toughest waterfall to climb. At the base, birds gather in the mist, including one that sometimes frightens people as it mimics the sounds of the rushing water, the grey catbird. These birds stay hidden in thick bushes and tangled branches instead of singing from high perches like other songbirds. They got their name from a cat-like meowing call, but they can mimic over 100 sounds, including other birds, frogs, and even machines. Their bodies are slate grey with a black cap on the head and a rust-coloured patch under the tail, which males flash during courtship by raising their tail and bowing. On the ground, they flip leaves with their bills to catch insects hiding underneath. Additionally, they eat unusual foods like donuts, cheese, boiled potatoes, and cornflakes, taking almost anything edible they find. Catbirds can also spot cowbird eggs in their nests and destroy them by pecking holes, one of the few birds smart enough to reject parasitic eggs. Males and females look identical, so the only way to tell them apart is by their behaviour during breeding season. Vicksburg is located high in the mountains, where miners had to haul supplies on burros up trails too steep for wagons. The streets are lined with balsam poplars, brought up the mountain by miners, trees that still stand after more than 150 years. The town was founded around 1867, after prospectors in Clear Creek Canyon lost their burros and later found them standing next to gold in the creek. It quickly grew to about 700 people, with 2 billiard halls, 2 hotels, and several saloons. Wooden water boxes built into the streets kept food cold and helped fight fires. Nearby, rusted mining equipment sits frozen next to log cabins, where miners once extracted resin from poplar trees to make healing salve for humans and animals. Roxborough State Park features popular red sandstone formations tilted at 70 degrees, rocks that existed before dinosaurs. The red colour comes from iron, turning entire ridges into corroded stone, similar to other formations in the region. Winter snow dusts them white, creating contrast so sharp that it melts within a day or two, leaving no trace. Seven plant communities grow here, each in its own microclimate, essentially stacking 7 distinct ecosystems within the park. Moreover, streams from snowmelt flow through the park toward the eastern lowlands, where snapping turtles dig into mudbanks to survive winter. Unlike other turtles, this one is a chelydridae. It cannot retract its head, so it developed jaws strong enough to bite through bones. Tiny worm-shaped growths on its tongue wiggle underwater to lure fish close, turning its mouth into a built-in fishing rod. Its tail stretches nearly as long as its shell, with sawtooth ridges along the length acting like a serrated knife. The lower shell barely covers the stomach, leaving legs and neck exposed like armour full of gaps. It buries itself in mud with only eyes and nostrils visible, waiting motionless for days until prey comes close. On land, it rises on its legs and snaps with enough force to sever fingers, but underwater, it swims away peacefully. These turtles hunt in the same streams that flow past old mining towns like Eureka, surviving for centuries while human settlements lasted only decades. Rivers from Roxborough flow west, feeding the Animus River and carving valleys where miners built remote camps like Eureka. Stamp mills pounded ore continuously, the noise bouncing off the mountains, while miners dug for gold and silver in freezing winds. Abandoned cabins and old mining equipment are left along gravel roads, with empty cells and vehicles below slopes that still have avalanches. Only one rebuilt jail and a few foundations remain where 2,000 people once lived, running mills that processed ore from the district's richest mines. Colorado National Monument features towering sandstone cliffs, spires, and deep gorges carved from red stone. Water eroded the softer layers faster than the harder ones, creating channels that dropped thousands of feet. Some sections of the canyons are so narrow, hikers can touch both walls, while the tops stretch wider than football fields. Potholes on the cliff tops collect rainwater, providing tiny habitats for creatures that can dry out completely and return to life when water returns. The monument exists today thanks to one man who spent years alone, cutting trails with hand tools, camping by himself, to take care of the land until it received official protection. Near Colorado National Monument's Red Canyons, birds mimic every sound carried through the rocks, from car horns to other bird calls. This mockingbird can copy over 200 sounds, switching songs every few seconds to fool predators and compete with rivals. Grey feathers help it blend into branches and barn roofs, while a long tail guides sharp turns when chasing insects. It shows off its sound collection to trick rivals and attract mates, much like kids impressing others with wild noises. Up close, its eyes move quickly, and the tail spreads to nearly half the bird's length, though from afar it appears plain grey. Mockingbirds also remember songs for years, reusing them as they move from cities to desert ghost towns. Their calls now fill the abandoned homesteads of Deerfield, where birds sit on old wooden dwellings that once housed farming families. Deerfield was an all-black homesteading community founded for African Americans to own land and live free from discrimination. At first, families lived in dugouts carved from the ground, burning dried cow dung for fuel since no trees grew on the plains. They later farmed wheat and shipped their crops to market, but the drought of the 1930s brought dust storms so thick they turned day into night and buried entire farms. During Prohibition, the founder made and sold alcohol to support the town, which locals nicknamed Beerfield. Unlike Deerfield, where residents dug wells hoping to find water, Rifle Falls gushes so forcefully from underground springs that it builds its own rock, with mineral deposits hardening like cement. In 1910, a hydroelectric plant split the original wide waterfall into 3 separate falls. As the water flows, it deposits travertine in layers, building the 70-foot drop the falls tumble over. Behind the falls, limestone caves hide, including one stretching 90 feet deep, where water carved tunnels while moss and ferns thrive in the constant mist. Along the rocky cliffs, bull snakes hunt rodents, mixing into the limestone so well that hikers often pass without noticing them coiled on the trail. This snake hisses louder than most, forcing air through a flap in its throat and producing a sound that can fool even experts into thinking it's a rattlesnake. When threatened, they shake their tails in dry leaves, perfectly mimicking rattlesnakes despite having no rattle or venom. They can grow over 8 feet long, longer than most humans, and rank among the region's largest snakes. Bull snakes also constrict prey by coiling around rodents and squeezing until the heart stops, then swallow them whole, starting with the head. Their pointed snout works like a shovel for digging into burrows, giving them a built-in tool for hunting underground. After hunting across desert basins, these snakes rest near water, while song sparrows hop nearby, ignoring the coiled predator. This bird sings over 20 different songs, mixing notes like a jazz musician to mark territory and attract mates. Found across the continent, it adapts to deserts, mountains, wetlands and cities by adjusting its diet and nesting sites. It pumps its tail while hopping through bushes for insects and seeds, using the movement to balance on thin branches. Males sing from exposed perches, even during snowstorms, defending territories year-round instead of migrating like most small birds. They memorise chirps from up to 8 neighbouring males, recognising rivals by their unique sounds. When escaping danger, they drop straight into vegetation rather than flying up, vanishing before predators can react. Brown streaks and spotted chests help them camouflage into dead grass and leaves, hiding so well that photographers often struggle to spot them even while singing. Pagosa Hot Springs is home to one of the deepest geothermal hot springs in the world, known as the Mother Spring, which has a recorded depth of over 305 metres. This geothermal aquifer feeds mineral-rich soaking pools historically used by indigenous people for healing and ceremonies, with the name Pagosa deriving from a Native American term meaning healing waters. Steam rising from Pagosa Hot Springs attracts ducks, including cinnamon teal males that glow rust red as if dipped in paint. These ducks tip head first into shallow water to reach food, doing handstands with their tails pointing straight up. Above dabbling ducks, the only hawk built for catching fish soars, diving feet first into water instead of hunting on land. Ospreys can spot fish swimming 3 feet below from 100 feet in the air, noticing prey other birds miss. Their feet have spiny scales and reversible outer toes that grip slippery fish like handcuffs, holding them tight during flight. They hover mid-air like helicopters before plunging talons first into water, sometimes submerging completely before bursting out with fish in both feet. After catching prey, they turn it head first in mid-flight to reduce air resistance, carrying it like a torpedo. They then tear the fish apart, starting at the gills, ripping chunks with their hooked beak while perched on branches or human structures. These hunters nest on leafless trees, poles and towers, including those at the Miramont castle. Priests built this castle in 1895 by combining 9 different architectural styles, creating a structure that looks like 5 houses stacked together. It first opened as a health centre for tuberculosis patients breathing mountain air, then became a home for nuns who lived in rooms that visitors now describe as freezing, even in summer. Staff report hearing footsteps in empty hallways, seeing shadow figures in the Queen's room, and finding doors locked from the inside with no other exits. Miles from the castle, colourful rocks at paint mines mark the areas where people extracted clay for pigments. Before Europeans arrived, native people ground the clay into paint for pottery and ceremonies. The rocks glow in bands of pink, orange, purple and white, coloured by different minerals as the area shifted from rainforest to plains. Erosion formed the soft clay into hoodoos and spires that resembled drip castles, some rising 40 feet tall, but crumbling a little more each time it rains. The clay is so fine and sticky that early settlers used it to make pottery, capable of holding water without leaking. Additionally, fossils of extinct camels, rhinoceroses and horses remain in the rock layers from when this area was tropical grassland rather than high desert. Birds of prey flying over paint mines include ferruginous hawks, the largest in North America, with wingspans about 5 feet long, roughly the size of a surfboard. Females grow 1.5 times larger than males, making them the rare birds where females do most of the heavy work. They fly with wings held in a V-shape above their bodies, instead of flat, creating a silhouette like it's shrugging while soaring. These hawks perch above prairie dog or ground squirrel burrows, waiting for animals to emerge, camping at the front door until dinner appears. This ghost town once held up to 1,500 people at its peak, but was abandoned when the silver market crashed, leaving behind empty dwellings and mining pits. The site was discovered by two prospectors whose mules wandered off at night. The next morning, they found the animals standing in a creek bed sparkling with gold flecks. Its founders then offered free lots to anyone willing to build, and the town quickly grew to include 3 saloons, 2 hotels, and a church for miners working nearby. Many roofs have collapsed, though the wooden walkways that kept miners from sinking in spring mud remained intact. Mount Garfield rises from flat land like a wall, overlooking Winfield, with red and orange cliffs that pilots use as visual patterns for flight navigation. The rock layers formed from sand dunes compressed into stone, preserving ripple marks left by winds years ago. Iron oxide rusts the sandstone into colours from cream to deep red, painting the mountain through corrosion. Rock slides constantly peel chunks from the cliff face, as soft sandstone crumbles when water freezes in cracks and expands. Wildlife also lives among the fractured rocks at the mountain's base, merging so well that hikers often step over them without noticing. One example is the odd reptile, plateau fence lizards. This lizard survives at high elevations where most reptiles would freeze, basking on rocks that store heat like batteries through cold nights. Males flash bright blue patches on their throats and bellies while doing push-ups, signalling rivals and attracting females. Their scales are rough like sandpaper, each tipped with a tiny spike, giving them a bark-like texture for camouflage. Throughout the day, the lizards change colour, darkening in the morning to absorb heat and lightening at midday to reflect sunlight. These lizards hide in rock cracks near camps like Lenado, where loggers once cut timber for mine shafts until the trees ran out. The camp began as a lead and zinc mine in the 1880s, housing about 300 people, and later shifted to lumber operations in the 1960s. Cabins from the 1890s still line Woody Creek, where residents hauled water in buckets and used outhouses, while the sawmill employed 100 workers. Miners transported ore down the mountain on burro trains travelling at night to avoid avalanches, supplying silver operations in nearby Aspen. Down that same mountain, a massive building stood, where the busy residents might not be human, but ghostly presences. The Stanley Hotel. This white hotel sits on a hill overlooking the town, built in 1909 by the inventor of the Stanley steamer, who came here to treat his tuberculosis. A housekeeper passed away in room 217, and soon after, guests report invisible hands tucking them into bed and even unpacking their luggage while they sleep. At night, piano music plays by itself in the empty ballroom, the bench moved, and sheet music scattered across the floor, even though the room remains locked. Mirrors reflect figures standing behind guests, who turn to find nobody there, while photographs capture faces in the windows of empty rooms. Flags on the roof snap in opposite directions during calm weather, with no wind. Even the famous author Stephen King stayed in room 217 and experienced nightmares that inspired him to write The Shining. Located near the town is the Continental Falls, a multi-tiered waterfall in the White River National Forest. Unlike a single-drop waterfall, the falls feature several tiers of tumbling water over rocky ledges as they are divided into different sections. It is fed by the outflow of Mohawk Lakes, which are a series of alpine lakes that glacially ensure a steady flow of water, even in dry conditions. Caribou was built nearly 10,000 feet high, where miners endured winters so harsh they faced a lack of food and supplies. Silver discovered in the early 1870s drew 3,000 people, who built this town above a tree line with a post office, hotels and saloons. Fire burned down the entire camp multiple times, but residents rebuilt every time until everyone finally gave up and left for good. Stone walls still show doorways and windows, while collapsed roofs leave skeleton-like structures filled with snow taller than a person. Visitors see rusted mining tools, old bottles and square nails among the rubble, remains of people who worked to extract silver from frozen ground. The Castlewood Dam ruins are the remains of a once prominent dam built in 1890 to provide water for agricultural irrigation in the surrounding plains. At the time of its construction, it was considered an engineering feat, with its impressive build constructed from locally sourced sandstone. Unfortunately, in 1933, after years of structural issues and leaks, the dam catastrophically failed during a massive storm. While the flood caused significant property damage, the loss of life was minimal due to warnings issued by telephone operators who spread the alarm downstream. The Croke-Patterson mansion, built in 1890, terrified its owner so much that he entered once, and then immediately sold it, claiming something evil lived inside. This 3-story stone building has pointed windows and dark walls, straight out of a horror movie. Even the guard dogs couldn't handle it. 2 reportedly jumped from the 3rd floor window in the middle of the night, too frightened to stay inside. Visitors now report seeing a little girl's ghost wandering the halls and hearing children crying in empty rooms, possibly linked to human bones found buried in the cellar. The basement also feels particularly wrong, making psychics refuse to enter, all sensing terrible crimes hidden underground. And just beyond this haunted house rises Gothic Mountain, its rock spires pointing skyward like cathedral towers, a perfect backdrop for the mansion's eerie presence. The structure looks even eerier with Gothic mountain behind it, its rock spires pointing like cathedral towers. This mountain got its name from those rocks, jutting upward in sharp points, creating a skyline like cathedral spires carved by hand. In 1879, miners built a silver camp on this site at almost 10,000 feet, higher than most people hike. In summer, wildflowers bloom in colours too vivid, they look fake, covering the hillsides with purple, yellow and red carpets. Meanwhile, during winter, snow can pile up so high that only the tops of frozen trees are visible, poking out like fence posts. Avalanches also race down the slopes, breaking pine trees and burying valleys in seconds. These harsh conditions also affected sites like Hancock, a mining camp in Gunnison National Forest, where dwellings now lean sideways after decades of avalanches. This ghost town is one of the highest settlements on the continent, built on the Sawatch Range at nearly 12,000 feet. It was a small railroad and mining town where miners gasped for air while digging for gold and silver on steep mountainsides. Breathing felt like sucking through a straw. During winter, residents survived by burning whatever they could find, including their own furniture and floors, leaving some houses with missing walls. The railroad ran through a tunnel carved into solid mountain, reinforced with California redwood, shipped across the country to prevent it from collapsing on passing trains. This black canyon in Gunnison National Park drops straight down over 2,000 feet, with its walls so dark they look painted black. Walls appear black because they contain almost no light-coloured minerals, absorbing sunlight instead of reflecting it. The canyon is so narrow at the bottom that some sections measure only 40 feet wide, creating a crack in the earth you could nearly jump across. Above it is the Painted Wall Cliff, a 2,000-foot rock face streaked with pink and white lines that look like frozen lightning. Sunlight reaches its floor for only about 33 minutes each day, leaving most of it in shadow. This cliff rises to 2,300 feet, twice the height of the Empire State Building and the tallest rock face in the state. Pink and white streaks across the dark wall formed when molten rock squeezed into cracks and hardened like frosting, piped into a layer cake. The patterns run three-dimensional through the entire formation, so slicing off a section would reveal completely different textures underneath. No plants grow on the sheer vertical face because nothing can grip the smooth rock, leaving it exposed as bare stone. In summer, birds like western tanagers perch in the treetops above, hunting insects in the open forest, while staying hidden as their feathers blend with the mountain's hues. These birds wear colours that look hand-painted, with yellow bodies, red faces, and black wings that flash white bars when they fly. Males change their red face colour by eating insects with pigments their bodies can't make, essentially dyeing their feathers from the inside out. In addition, western tanagers hop through grass catching bees and wasps in midair, somehow avoiding stings while swallowing insects that could eliminate other birds. Great Dunes National Park holds the tallest sand dunes in North America, with some piles reaching over 750 feet, the same height as stacking 2 statues of Liberty. Wind from the nearby valley has pushed sand against the mountains for years, forming dunes that continue to grow today. Each spring, Medano Creek flows at the base, fed by snowmelt, then disappears by summer, as if the river is working only part-time. When sand slides down the dunes, it creates booming and singing sounds as grains rub together. Vibrations that can be heard even from long distances. Animals like collared lizards also sprint across the hot sand, on their back legs like tiny dinosaurs, running upright to keep their bodies off ground, hot enough to fry an egg. This lizard runs on 2 legs to chase prey or escape danger, sprinting faster than a human jog, with its front legs tucked in. Males have blue and green bodies with 2 black collar marks around their necks, like racing stripes painted on a reptile. Their eyes move independently like a chameleon's, watching in 2 directions at once to spot both prey and predators without turning their head. Moreover, the collared lizard's tail stretches longer than the body and whips side to side for balance when running. They do push-ups on rocks to show dominance, bobbing up and down to warn other males away from their territory. Additionally, they bite hard enough to break human skin and refuse to let go once clamped down, holding on with jaw pressure that rivals much bigger animals. Even in extreme heat above 100 degrees, they hunt by balancing on rocks with only their toes touching, keeping their bodies raised to avoid burning on hot stone. Alta became one of the first towns in the country to use alternating current electricity, powering its ore mill in the 1890s, decades before most cities adopted the technology. Miners lived in wooden cabins built so close to avalanche paths that some were swept away multiple times and rebuilt in the exact same spot. The AC system sent electricity from a generator 2.5 miles up the mountain using just 2 copper wires, costing less than 1% of what direct current would have required. Once electricity replaced steam engines, workers ran the stamp mills non-stop, crushing silver ore 24/7 with loud, constant noise. Flat irons are rock slabs that rise at sharp angles, named because they look like old-fashioned irons heated on stoves. These rocks formed as flat layers underground, then got pushed vertical when mountains rose beneath them. The red and orange stone comes from iron oxide, rusting the sandstone the same way metal turns orange when left in the rain. Hiking trails wind between massive boulders that broke off the main formations and tumbled downhill. In winter, snow collects in cracks and expands as it freezes, slowly splitting the rock and creating new cracks that widen every year. At dawn, fog rolls through the formations, making the red rocks appear to float in white clouds. At the base, mischievous birds like the American robins hop through grass-hunting worms, their orange chests mixing with the rust-coloured stones. This robin is one of the continent's most widespread birds, living in environments ranging from city parks to mountain forests. They tilt their heads not to hear worms, but to spot them with one eye, detecting subtle movement in soil and grass. Afterward, they extract earthworms from the ground by gripping them with their beak and pulling with sufficient force to stretch the worm out. The orange colour of their chest comes from pigments in berries and insects, intensifying when they eat more boldly coloured food. During migration, robins fly in a jerky, uneven pattern, flapping several times before gliding with wings flat to conserve energy. When escaping predators, instead of darting faster, they drop straight into bushes, disappearing before hawks can react. Carson sits high in the San Juan Mountains, where miners hauled supplies up switchbacks so steep some pack animals lost their footing. Ore was transported down the mountain on toboggans instead of wagons, sliding so fast that drivers occasionally fell off cliffs. The town expanded in the 1880s after prospectors discovered gold and silver, with cabins built at elevations over 11,000 feet. For 8 months each year, residents lived in one-room cabins heated by wood stoves, relying on canned food and dried meat, while snow blocked the trails. By 1910, the camp was abandoned as ore deposits ran out, leaving log structures with windows intact and furniture still in place. Garden of the Gods shows red sandstone spikes tilted nearly vertical, rising 300 feet like giant fins cutting through the earth. These rocks started as sand dunes that hardened, then were pushed up when nearby mountains formed, bending the ground like crumpled paper. The tallest spike, Steamboat Rock, balances on a narrow edge, looking ready to fall, yet it remains firmly in place. Erosion cut windows and arches through softer stone, making holes you can walk through, with the sky visible on both sides. At sunset, the rock glows orange when sunlight hits directly, so intense it looks almost unreal. Beyond these red spires, the maroon bells can be seen, their peaks so precise they look carved by a machine. These twin peaks rise over 14,000 feet, their symmetrical, pyramid-like forms reflected perfectly in the lake at their base. The mountains glow dark red from iron-rich mudstone that oxidized in the air, giving them their maroon colour as well as their name. Formed from compressed mud and silt, handholds can break suddenly, making climbing the peaks dangerous even for professional hikers. Nearby you can see the jagged spires of a site called the Castles. This formation consists of multiple stone towers that jut upward like a fortress built by giants, with each spire separated from the others by deep gaps. Over time, erosion carved them by wearing away the weaker sections, leaving tall, resistant columns that form a skyline that looked almost hand-sculpted. These views are even more fascinating when seen from Keebler Pass, a road that gives you front row seats past the towers. This dirt road climbs over 10,000 feet through an aspen grove, possibly the largest on Earth, with trees on the mountainsides sharing roots underground. The pass closes from November through June, when snow piles over 10 feet deep, burying the road under drifts that take months to melt. Aspens on both sides turn gold at slightly different times by elevation, so the colour gradually crawls up the mountain over 2 weeks. Drivers report sudden temperature drops of 20 degrees when entering shaded sections, shifting from warm sunlight to cold shadow in seconds. Along Keebler Pass, small bluebirds dart between leafless aspen trees, catching insects mid-flight with their mouths open like tiny jet engines. Tree swallows are birds with iridescent blue-green backs that change colour with the light, shifting from blue to purple to green like an oil slick. They nest in holes drilled by woodpeckers, taking over abandoned tree cavities and lining them with feathers collected from other birds. Each day, they can eat up to 2,000 insects, catching mosquitoes, flies, and beetles while flying at speeds over 20 miles per hour. Their eyes track several at once, allowing them to change direction abruptly and grab prey they spotted seconds earlier, all while dodging tree branches. When perched on white aspen bark, these birds can turn their heads almost 180 degrees to watch for predators behind them, spotting threats without moving their bodies. Dyersville was founded by a Methodist minister who skied over mountain passes to deliver mail and preach, earning the nickname Snowshoe Itinerant. Later it became known as Garo, named after the owner's French wife. The town sat so high in the 10-mile range that miners could only work for about 4 months before snow buried it. A schoolhouse on the site still holds desks carved with initials from children who walked miles through avalanche zones to attend classes taught by teachers paid in gold dust. Cabins were built with walls slanted inward, so snow sliding off the roofs would not crush them. Each September, when the first snow arrived, miners dropped their tools mid-work, leaving tunnels half dug and equipment frozen in place until spring. The Colorado plains stretch flat and open, once covered in grass, tall enough to hide a person before settlers ploughed it under. Barbed wire fences now divide the land into squares, marking ranches that need over 10,000 acres to support a single herd of cattle. Wildlife here has adapted for speed and camouflage, surviving in grass that now grows only to knee height. One example is the swift fox, the smallest fox in North America, about the size of a house cat, but built for speed on open grasslands. They can run up to 30 miles per hour across flat prairies, earning their name by outrunning predators in short bursts like sprinters. Their large ears help them detect mice and insects moving underground from several feet away. Another example of adaptable wildlife in this site is the sharp-tailed grouse, which performs one of the strangest mating displays, inflating purple neck sacs and stomping its feet like a wind-up toy. At dawn, males gather on traditional dancing grounds called leks, where they strut with tails raised and make rattling sounds with their wings. Their yellow eyebrow combs swell and turn bright orange during mating season, sticking up like angry cartoon brows. Unlike other grouse with fan-shaped tails, they have stiff centre feathers that point out like spikes. During the dance, males stomp their feet up to 40 times per second, spinning and bowing as the ground vibrates beneath them. As more males join, the display grows louder, with several birds booming, rattling and stomping together until females arrive. From the edge of the lek, females watch closely and choose only the best dancer, ignoring the rest. Adena was a railroad town named after a local woman who convinced the company to build through her land by threatening to block the tracks with her wagon. The post office operated from 1910 to 1949, serving farmers who shipped sugar beets and wheat by rail to distant cities. Located on the eastern plains, temperatures could swing 70 degrees in a single day, so residents built half their homes underground to stay cool in summer and warm in winter. Dust devils formed so often on the flat ground that children would run toward them, letting the spinning wind lift them slightly off their feet before throwing them back down. Mount Bierstadt is over 14,000 feet high, named after a painter who first climbed it in 1863. For 30 years, it was called Mount Rosalie, after the woman he named it for, before later being renamed in his honour. Near the summit, wind has bleached trees white and bent them sideways from constant exposure. Later, miners drilled test shafts and attempted blasting on the slopes in search of gold, leaving visible marks. The peak was also the first in the region to be climbed on skis, with people sliding down the same slopes, where prospectors once carried drilling equipment. This moose, found near the mountain, weighs over 1,000 pounds, but can dive 20 feet and hold its breath for 30 seconds to eat plants from the lake bottom. Its long face and drooping nose give it a comical look, with a flap of skin called a bell hanging under its chin that swings as it walks. Each hair is hollow and filled with air, trapping heat so efficiently that it can survive temperatures 60 degrees below zero. Above the lakes where it feeds, mountain goats balance on cliffs so steep that a single misstep would send them falling. This goat leaps 12 feet between rocks, landing on ledges barely wider than a dinner plate without slipping. Its hooves have soft pads surrounded by hard edges, working like climbing shoes with built-in grip. North Clear Creek Falls drops over 100 feet straight from a flat plateau, like water spilling off a giant table. It flows over hardened volcanic ash that erupted years ago and solidified like concrete in midair. The impact below sends up mist that forms rainbows on sunny days, visible even from the parking lot. In the 1990s, 91 moose were brought here from Wyoming, Utah and North Dakota. Their descendants now roam the willows, making this one of the few spots where you can see both moose and waterfalls. This toad spends winter hidden underground, slowing its body until it barely moves, then warming up again in spring. Its bumpy skin releases a foul-tasting poison that makes predators spit it out. It also has a white stripe running down its back like a chalk line. Instead of hopping, it crawls on all fours like a lizard. During breeding, males cling to females for days while waiting to fertilise eggs. In water, it moves with slow kicks that look more like crawling than swimming. Kyoto began in the late 1800s when farmers planted wheat on flat prairie. The town grew quickly as trains hauled grain out and brought supplies in, but it declined when Dust Bowl wines buried fences and filled wells with sand. Only the concrete corners remain of the old structures, like the schoolhouse, where children once studied in a single room until it closed in 1937. The outhouse also still stands with its wooden walls. Meanwhile, the church lost its roof and walls, leaving only floor beams and a bell tower pointing upward like a broken finger. Wooden homes now lean to one side, with doors hanging open to empty lots, and with dirt piled against their walls. Aspen began as a silver mining camp in the 1880s. When the mines closed, it transformed into a ski resort, as snow proved more profitable than metal. It sits nearly 8,000 feet above sea level, and visitors from lower areas often struggle to breathe just walking upstairs. Victorian mansions built by mining millionaires still line the streets, some now worth far more than when they were built a century ago. Aspen Mountain rises directly behind downtown, with ski lifts visible from restaurant windows, climbing slopes too steep for beginners. Chain stores are banned in the city centre. In winter, real estate prices increase so high that a single parking spot can cost more than a house in most towns. Rocky Mountain National Park stretches over 400 square miles, filled with high peaks and alpine lakes. It was established after a naturalist persuaded Congress to protect the area through years of effort and campaigning. Trail Ridge Road crosses the park above the tree line, where hurricane-force winds have bent road signs flat and torn car doors from their hinges. Wildlife from different climates meet here, creating predators and prey that have never encountered each other before. The peaks rise so high that weather can shift within minutes, from clear skies to white-out snowstorms. Glaciers once carved the valleys, leaving lakes so clear that fish are visible far below. In winter, temperatures plunge, and snow grows so much that animals dig tunnels to reach the grass beneath. The park's peaks have trails so long that hikers begin at sunrise and usually return just before dark after a 15-mile round trip. Above the tree line, only small plants survive, clinging to the ground to withstand constant wind. Lightning also hits the peaks often in summer, forcing climbers to turn back by afternoon to avoid the daily electrical storms. Golden-mantled ground squirrels live near the peaks and often get mistaken for chipmunks because of the stripes on their backs, though they're twice as large and lack facial stripes. They sit upright on rocks, using their front paws like hands to turn and nibble seeds and nuts. Their long claws and flexible fingers act like small shovels, allowing them to dig burrows 6 feet down into soil and gravel. Each fall, they bury thousands of seeds in different spots, and by forgetting most of them, they help new trees grow. These squirrels can eat half their body weight in a day, stuffing so much food into their cheeks that their heads look swollen. By September, they gain enough weight for hibernation that they waddle with bellies close to the ground. During winter, their body temperature drops just above freezing, and they wake every few weeks to eat from their stored food before sleeping again. Another species found in the park is the American dipper. This bird walks underwater in fast mountain streams, searching for bugs and small fish, as if walking on land. It is also the only songbird that dives underwater, entering rapids that would freeze most birds in minutes. Their clear eyelids close like goggles, allowing it to see insects under rocks while swimming. When perched, it bobs up and down on logs and rocks, moving constantly, even while standing still. Its feathers are twice as thick as most birds of its size, and are waterproofed with oil from its large gland. Additionally, they sing even in winter, standing on icy rocks surrounded by snow while water freezes on their backs. They also build nests behind waterfalls and carry their food through the curtain of water several times an hour. This is Colorado, a land of hidden wonders and remarkable architectural marvels. Now, if you don't want to miss the most unreal wonders of Alabama, check out this video.